CPPI, I remind you, were responsible for a big blow-up of monetary funds in 2007.
Okay, thank you very much. It's very nice to be finally in Brazil and in Búzios. I'm going to talk about CPPIs. I guess most of you know what these guys are. Probably the way I came across with them was not the most common way. And I have been looking into them for some time now, especially with master students. I have some master students which are mainstream finance, and I end up having to give them something to simulate and risk evaluate and so on. And it is nice, okay? Julia is not here, but I have actually done something connected to behavioral finance with some of them, and not even behavioral finance is able to explain why these guys still survive, and they are still out there and being sold to investors, and people do still invest with them. So the focus of this presentation is going to be on what I call design risk. So going straight to the end, what I wanted to take away from here is that probably when you rely too much on issuers, and we trust issuers, meaning financial institutions, a bit too much, maybe at the end of the day, the investors will bear a risk, which is nothing to do with market risk or any risk that we have been talking about, but is actually design risk. And the issue, or my focus currently, is on trying to measure design risk somehow. And of course, the notion of design risk can be extended, but here I will present it to portfolio insurance strategies. So this is the outline of the talk. I hope to be able to cover it all in 20 minutes. I have been cutting slides very fast. So of course, if you try to look at this in a bit more systematic way, even portfolio insurance, which is relatively simple, you need to formally define what a portfolio insurance is. And so what I will be talking about is a dynamic strategy, self-financing strategy, where basically a priori you have some sort of allocation mechanism that decides how much you put into the risky asset versus the riskless asset, okay? We could enter many discussions about whether the riskless asset exists or not and so on, but that's not the point here. And if it's a portfolio insurance, at some point, well, it has guaranteed something, and the typical design in the market is that it guarantees a percentage of the initial wealth at maturity. For instance, you invest 100 euros or reais, and at maturity, which could be 5 years from now or 15 years from now, it guarantees you 100 or 80% on that, okay? So this is just some notation, which we can easily skip, given the audience. And with this slide, I just want to highlight the obvious fact that we know portfolio insurance since ever, okay? The stop-loss strategy, where we put all the money in the risky asset, and when we have lost enough, we just disinvest. Well, it's a portfolio insurance strategy. It's a very naive one, and it just says put 100% in the risky. If it touches the floor, take it out, okay? And actually, I mean, there is another strategy, which I call here safety first, and this strategy is important because it's a special case of a CPPI. It's a CPPI 1, and in this strategy, we can always decide, okay, I only want to risk 20% of my money, so I only invest in the risky assets, 20%, okay? The rest is in the bank account, and whatever. You put in the bank account at first the present value of the future guarantee, and that's it, okay? So these naive strategies exist together with other non-naive strategies, which I will quickly go through. So stop loss, we know it. Whenever we lose enough, we take the money out. Safety first, it's a bit idiotic strategy, if you allow me. It's very, very naive. We can, of course, do better than this, but I want to take it as a benchmark for comparison purposes, okay? So the idea here is that if I want to guarantee something in the future, I take the present value, put it growing to the future for sure, and only the remaining is invested in the risky asset. And if it doesn't go to zero, I don't lose it all, and that's it, okay? So it's very easy to understand. Of course, if I only invest 50% of my original wealth at the beginning, I only get about 50% of whatever the underlying has evaluated in the end. Okay? all of us who are from the background in math finance, whenever we talk about these products which have the property that they guarantee something, so it's like the upside potential with limited losses, we remember options, okay? And of course, the so-called option-based portfolio insurance have been proposed, and it's well used, but it does rely on the existence or on the assumption that we can actually buy options. It could be seen as a call or a put, it doesn't matter, but that those options exist and they can be traded. And if you recall my definition of a portfolio insurance strategy, I did not assume the existence of options, okay? So what we have to do, of course, and this is real life, okay? So most of these products are built on underlying assets which we don't find tradable options. And even if there are tradable options, they are not with the majority of the investment products, okay? These investment products can have 5, can have 15 years to maturity, and there are no options with those maturities in the markets, okay? So no problem, we all know what to do. So whenever we don't have an option, we mimic an option, we dynamically replicate an option, and that should be fine, okay? True, up to some extent, which is called model risk, right? But I'm not worried about this, because who bears this risk? The issuers, okay? Because they have promised a payoff. If they do not obey, that's their problem, and that's their risk to hedge. Of course, you can always take different kinds of view on these products, but option-based portfolio insurance do base the risk of mimicking the option, of course, okay? And there might be gap risk and lots of literature on this. I'm not focusing on the risks for the issuer. Okay, so CPPIs, they can be understood as a simplification of an OBPI, where you don't have to worry about the delta of the option, and where what you do is that at any moment in time, you see how much above the floor. The floor is the running value of the guarantee. How much above the floor you are, you call that the cushion, pick that amount and multiply by a number called the multiplier. And the numbers, typical numbers are 3, 4, 5, up to 7, okay? Of course, this leads to some problems in terms of self-financing, which is some of these products must have embedded a loan. I mean, if I have to multiply by 7, if I have 100, the original cushion is 50, and if I have to multiply 50 by 7, I need a loan, right? But those products do account for that, okay? Of course, if the multiplier is not 5, but it's 2, anyhow, okay? So what we have to do is always invest M times the cushion in the risky asset and whatever is remaining in the riskless asset. Well, you don't need a model to implement this, okay? You need a spreadsheet. There is not model risk at all, okay? You just need to account for interest rates if you are lending and borrowing from, okay? So from the point of view of the issuer, this is easier than an OBPI. Now, the point is, what about from the point of view of the investor, okay? So, of course, what you can do is, well, start with the basics, standard Monte Carlo simulations, and try to understand, well, the underlying would have a profile like this. What about the CPPIs, okay? What about the CPPI 1, the naive one, the very naive, idiotic strategy, versus 3, 5, OBPI, stop loss, all these things. And, well, I'm not going through all the results of everything, but one thing which became clear at first, immediately, is that there is extremely high probability that the terminal value of any CPPI with a multiplier bigger than 1 to end up close to the guarantee, no matter the underlying, okay? So it's like something pulling the value of the strategy there. And this only happens with CPPIs. It does not happen with stop loss, with OBPI, or with any other strategy. So this seems to be typical only of these products. Then another thing is that if you think in terms of stochastic dominance to see which kind of investors would ever choose a CPPI 3 or 5, the answer is you're not going to get an answer for that because no one. Okay, so we can show there exists even second order or at least third order stochastic dominances of the basic strategies, stop loss, CPPI 1, and even OBPI, okay, over any CPPI with a multiplier higher than 1. Okay, so we thought of Okay, let's try to be nice. I mean, these products are popular. Let's do different kind of simulations where we assume that of course this doesn't happen in reality, but let's be very nice. I mean, these strategies are supposed to give you the upside potential, right? So let's assume I know the underlying is going to appreciate 50% and see how all these strategies perform, okay? We had to develop some techniques, but this is doable. And of course, this is hard to understand at first, so I'll just explain the results. Of course, OBPI, it's an European strategy. So of course, if you know the maturity value, there is one payoff possible, because we are assuming the maturity is fixed. Here, what's important to notice is that only CPPIs with maturities bigger than 3, 5, they are extremely path dependent. Okay, so first of all, these strategies are sold to investors as European style, and they are not. They are extremely path dependent, and this is nowhere disclaimed. But most importantly, it seems that it doesn't matter. I mean, if I make the underlying grow 5 times, multiplied by 500% in 5 years, or even 8 times in the 5 years, well, the underlying goes like that, right? But I know this is one path, but CPPIs goes like this, okay? And this becomes a pattern over and over and over again. So this seems to be a good strategy to be sold, like if you are sure you want to get just the guarantee, please give me your money, because even if the market booms, I make sure you only get that, or almost sure, okay? Which is not a very sensible product to exist. And in this, I know it's a path, we did thousands of simulations, but, well, this is a very nice path. I mean, the CPPI went up by enormously, and still it lost it all. Effect of the multiplier, okay? Other fantastic things is that expected payoff, exactly the guarantee, okay? So if you guarantee 100%, you get 100%. If you guarantee 80, you get 80. And almost no volatility, so for sure. I mean, it's almost sure that you lose your money, or you get exactly what you want. Well, then we did other things, but if you want to condition in any other points in time, well, it doesn't matter, because at the end, you will lose it, okay? Of course, once in a while, there are some, out of 100,000 simulations, you get extremely rich one time, but it's minor effects. So if you wonder in terms of empirics, if you rely on real data, things will not get better, because the simulations up to now had to be in geometric Brownian motion or conditional geometrical Brownian motion, so things will not get better. They will get worse, because if you include jumps, it gets worse. If you include skewness, it gets worse. Everything gets worse. And if you ask a question, has there ever been a good moment to a long maturity CPPI? Ever. So suppose this is just some basic empirics. So if you would have invested, since the existence of Standard & Poor's 500, would it ever been nice to have invested in such products? And, well, I didn't report the results yet, because they are not written down, but I guess you know the result, and the answer is no. Never, ever have that been that moment in time. Not if you have a maturity of 5 years or more. If it's 6 months, yeah, of course, there are periods where you have, but still, the Standard & Poor's doesn't grow. The important thing for these products is that it grows not on average, but every single day, which is idiotic, I'm sorry to say. So, can behavioral finance explain why portfolio insurance is popular? Well, not really. And this fits with Julia's talk, that's why I saw. Not really. It can explain why we might choose stop loss, even OBPI sometimes, and especially CPPI 1, but not a CPPI with a multiplier higher than 1. So what's the problem of CPPI? Well, to be a bit abrupt or sincere, I don't know, bad design, okay, bad financial engineering, or if you want to call it risk, design risk, okay? The problem now, so I have been focused, of course, this does not exist only in CPPIs. There are other products, other structured products out there which suffer from this toxicity or from this design risk, it's fancier name. So, of course, what I have been trying to do is to formally define what the hell is design risk in this context or not. And I'm still struggling to be formal in that. But it's clear to me that the problem with CPPI is the constant multiplier and the fact that it does attract to the floor very fast when it's very high and doesn't allow to get out from the floor at any point, basically. So why does these products still exist out there? Okay, they are still sold to investors. And I know we are very behavioral and biased, but there is limit to stupidity, I think. So it's still a puzzle to me, but they are sold, they exist. I think people in academia has focused on a lot of theories about these CPPIs, like jump risk and the gap risk, who doesn't really matter that much, I think. I mean, it's interesting, but I think there's a lot to do, especially in terms of making it aware to the public. But in general, I mean, it would be nice to have someone else trying to look into bad engineering, bad financial engineering, or into design risk, if you want it, it's a nicer name, to think about measures of design risk, how to measure this. It's very hard to disentangle from the other risks, market risk, model risk, all these risks. Okay. So this is it. Bruno is not here, but I wanted to say parabéns, Bruno, and to let him know that, well, we need at least 60 more years of him, at least, okay? So he must start on getting very fit and to be here 60 years from now. And, well, thank you all for listening, and I'm available for questions.
Yeah. And I'll keep a question for myself as well.
A very nice talk, because normally you see completely people's queue when present this. It's idiotic, but it's actually what actually attract the magnet. It is moral hazard by brokers / bandits that they actually have incentive to basically knock out almost all the time your product because they're short.
I don't see the problem with me is that, I mean, if you're trying to steal someone, I still understand because you get rich, right? But here I don't see the issuers getting any benefit out of it.
No, the benefit they get 2%, now less, but 2% at day one, and I need to hedge the risk, and my bonus gets this year. It's not in 5-year times. Yeah.
Okay. Anyhow, so if we start talking about design risk, maybe they are not.
I will not call it design risk. I call it people's bandits.
Yeah, but then you don't publish. I mean, I tried it.
Of course.
Okay. No, you have to call it a risk of some nature. Yeah. So then it gets mathematical. You put mathematical formulas. It's a risk, and then you can actually say what you want within the lines. Because if you are that, I think I'm assertive. You are even more. Then it's like, no. This is a journal for financial institutions, and thank you, no thank you. Okay, so it's not trivial.
There is something called the Kelly criterion investment, which aims at maximizing the log of the return, the log return basically. So the long term. There is a paper by Taleb and Gaiman and other people also on that topic. But up to what I know of the Kelly criterion, which was, I think, so Kelly's, time of Thorpe, etc., the multiplier is always below 1 and significantly below 1. I mean, I'm very surprised to see a multiplier above 1.
Yeah, that's, there are other products as well. I mean, autocallable, what is it? I don't not remember, but I had a paper also. So autocallables, there's a lot of products out there which doesn't have any rationality, would I say, from the point of view of the investor. So the issue is why people are investing. Is this a behavioral issue or not? I don't think so. I think it's really...
There is a behavioral
component.
Which is probably due to the need to double in when you lose. This is a typical behavior.
But I looked into prospect theory and cumulative prospect theory, and you cannot justify CPPIs. You can justify other behaviors. Correct. Even a CPPI 1 you can, but not 3 or 5.
Absolutely. So, I mean, to answer your question about you want to regulate that, I mean, I've been working on regulation. I mean, I have a very, very strong conviction that when a financial institution issues for the broad public products like this, that should be completely forbidden by regulators. I mean, that the risk calculation is very easy to make. That's not the only one I've seen. I mean, I've seen other risks where the institution, they lost everything during the financial crisis. Yeah, it was a crisis. Yeah, I made the calculation before with calibrating things as of 2006, and the odds of making money in the fund was something like 1%. There was 99% chances of losing money. So, sure, yeah. so I mean, this kind of thing, when you have so I mean, that's okay. Anyway,
okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.